Hello, everyone. So we are back for another career and spirituality conversation. So I am Julie Pone. I support spiritual seekers having a career experience to grow professionally and spiritually. And I'm honored to have my colleague and friend, Gina Schatz, with me today. And Gina, how are you?
I'm so great. And I'm so grateful to be here, Julie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to have our grounding, 2 minutes grounding, before launching into the conversation. So for everyone who is in a safe space to do so, you may close your eyes. And we are going to first just press our feet on the ground, just to feel and acknowledge the ground, the earth underneath us, feeling the support that we have from the earth, and setting the intention to ground ourselves today. And then let's move up our awareness, our focus back up into our chest area, and more specifically in the middle of our chest where our heart is beating. And let's just imagine or visualize for a moment as if our breath is flowing in and out directly through the heart. And for a minute, let's just breathe a little deeper and a little slower than we usually do. Taking some slow, deep, balanced, harmonious breath. Flowing in and out through the heart. And feeling the calm that this brings to our mind and body. And when you're feeling ready, bringing ourselves back and opening our eyes. And hello and welcome again. Hi, so Gina, you're a body worker, a bodywork therapist with a long experience, and you've developed your own method to work on people, but also to train other therapists to work better with their patients, with their clients. And spirituality has had some weaving into your long career, and we're going to be talking about that. But first, I would like to ask you, what is your relationship to spirituality? What's your definition, or what's relationship to you?
That's a juicy question. I feel like we could spend the whole time on that. And I'm also really still basking in the groundedness you brought us, Julie. You're really powerful. I remember the first time I did some sort of grounding and meditation with you, I was like, whoa, you're something else. So thank you for that. I have my very white voice on now as a result. I've deeply relaxed. So thank you. That was beautiful. So your question, how has spirituality, what's my relationship with spirituality? I would say oneness is what comes to mind. I don't have a relationship with spirituality like it's something I check in with once in a while or something that's outside of me. I am one of those who believes that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And I'm also wildly excited about this physical experience. It's why I teach and do the work that I do, because I think this is a ride. This is super good and awesome. And I'm very aware that my spirit is being housed in this body. My
Uh-huh.
beingness is my spirit and my body together, but my spirit is something of its own that is limitless and timeless. Whereas, our bodies do have an expiration date. Um, so so I'm reminded often, and I also share openly, that our spirit is the biggest part of us, and it is the part that chose the body. It is the part that can manage the mind. It is the part that lets us know our energy frequencies, and it's its own entity, if you will. So that's my experience with a spiritual aspect of me. And then as it relates to outside of me, like, what's my spirituality like, or what's my belief in God or religion, or some other types of conversations come up in that way, as well, as if it's outside of us. And again, it's inside of me and I'm one with it. So I can disconnect from it. I can be off track. I can be not in resonance with it. But my spiritual being is part of the whole, which is the universe, higher spirit, God, whatever folks call it. Um, and I can be in touch with that, or I can be out of touch with that, but it's always part of me. It's the biggest part of me.
Okay. And so how has your understanding of that um, evolved, and how is that following or not your career path? So can you tell us about your career journey, and how this spirituality aspect has influenced it?
Yeah. So the evolution, interestingly enough, I'm going to just touch on that at the beginning here, because the evolution I see has become more sophisticated, but it's always been consistent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So right now, in this year that we're in right now, I would actively and openly say, I know that I have angels that are guiding me, and I know that I can ask for assistance at any time and almost immediately receive it. Back then, at the beginning of my career path, I also had angels, but I didn't know that. I knew that there was something, but I didn't know what the thing was, and I didn't know exactly like how to interface with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I, looking back, and even then, was very clear that I was being guided, very clear. Sometimes with resistance, sometimes getting in my own way, but the guidance was always there.
And like when you like, did you have were you raised into a specific spiritual or religious um
No,
no?
no. I say that I was raised as a religious mutt. So my mother's family, yeah, mutt. Like a mutt dog, when
Oh
they're like,
yes.
yeah, instead of a purebred. So I was a religious mutt, and also good. Like, no shade thrown in any direction, but my mother's family was Jewish,
Yeah.
which is a religion that is very steeped in believing in God, one God only. But my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, was an atheist.
Okay.
So how were we Jews? How were we having Jewish holidays if there was no God involved? Like, it just was so weird. And I did a little bit of like Sunday school, if you will, when I was a kid, but I didn't have a bat mitzvah or anything like that. I was sort of like the orphan
Uh-huh.
kid that wasn't really Jewish, because I was only there for a little bit of time.
Mhm.
My dad was raised as a Roman Catholic. His mother was from Italy, and he was a huge believer. He was probably the biggest part of spirituality, if you will, when the conversation on religion and spirituality used to split and kind of like be adversaries, almost like we're this instead of that. But my dad was definitely a believer. He definitely believed in God. But he was angry because the Catholic Church had whatever they had with him, nothing, nothing predatory, but he'd been divorced. And so he was, like, not seen as the others, if you will, old school way of thinking. And so I never went to church with my dad, but he did believe in God more than my mom's side of the family. And my parents were divorced when I was 2, so I was in both houses a lot.
Yeah.
And my dad, because I lived with parents in 2 different homes, I would see my dad on the religious holidays that were Catholic, Christmas, et cetera, Christmas and Easter. But my mom, the Jewish parent, had a Christmas tree.
Ah.
But I never went to church. So I really was like, what the hell? I don't completely understand. But I knew, but I was always, thankfully, I know some children, some adults who were raised as children in homes that were very contentious around religion or just confusing around religion, and they became agnostic or atheist or just angry. And not that atheists or agnostics are angry, but one of those three I've seen people adopt. And luckily, I didn't adopt any of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's because my roots, my spiritual roots are so strong that I've always said, you could confuse me all you want, but I still know what I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you know what you know?
It's a knowing, Julie. I'm telling you, it's a knowing. And it's part of that. It's part of that. Like I have a couple, I'll tell you some stories. I have a couple specific instances while I was growing up, like as a child, young child, and definitely as a teenager when I was angry, legitimately hormone angry. And I'm positive that it was a higher something. And I'm
Oh,
positive. And I heard it, I felt it, sort of like stopped me in my tracks a few times. Yeah, it's pretty intense and amazing.
okay. Hmm.
So after a while, when you have enough of those, you stop questioning it. You're like, okay, just surrender to the knowing. I just know.
Yeah. So, how did you, career-wise, how did you start? Or did you have, were you always into body work, or like, has there been some turns and twists along the way? How did that happen?
Yeah. So interesting. I'm positive that I'm in the career I'm meant to be in. So for those who are here, or if you don't know yet, in the world of practitioners, manual and movement practitioners, yoga, massage, Pilates, etc., our career spans aren't usually that long. We burn out for lots of reasons, which I'm here to change.
Uh-huh.
And um, I have been in the industry for 30 years and I'm still thriving and happy. And I believe that that's because I came meant to do this. And the reason I know that tangibly is because I was very young. And so I'm going to totally date myself here again. But I remember my mom had a full set of encyclopedias,
Yeah.
and they were on a kind of lower shelf in the living room. So even when I was really young, I could reach for the books.
Mm.
And I love learning. My brain is like, I just like sponge it up, like, tell me more, tell me more. And I never really went much past the A book in the encyclopedia set,
Yeah.
because in the A book, right in the very like first third, there were these clear pages in the anatomy section where you could overlay like the bones to the organs to the muscles. Days, Julie, months I spent fascinated, wanting, I wish that I could have at the time, the books, they're like the pages are attached to the spine, but I wanted to like pull the pages out and put the organs relative to the muscles or the bones relative to the organs. Like I wanted them to be in a different order because I just wanted so much to see what was in here. I was fascinated. And I didn't always understand all the words because I was really young, but I always tried. And I would go back and I would read and read and read. So that's when I was super little. And I also remember eating dinner. And my mom says now, as a grown up, she says, I'm really sorry. We didn't know what a vegetarian was when you were little. It was a long time ago. But I can see now looking back that you were a vegetarian, because I would eat, we'd have chicken, or, we'd have an animal product, and I would see the anatomy, and I would like lose it at the table. And
Oh.
she was like, "No, you're eating dinner." I'm like, "No." So it wasn't the encyclopedia that did that, but I was definitely already like very invested and curious and in touch with this vessel, even
Mhm.
though I know we have a time limit. So um, fast forward to later in high school, I was living with my dad, and he was explaining to me about this vessel. Like I learned that word from him, and he would say, this is temporary, and your spirit goes on forever. And I remember I remember exactly where I was sitting when I was listening to him. And even though I didn't cognitively understand what he was saying, I had a knowing of what he was saying. And that's when I started identifying that the body and the spirit, while in an intimate relationship, were separate. And so from there, I was just always fascinated with the body. And I went into college, and it was just like a natural progression that this is what I was going to end up doing through my education.
Wow. You
I
also
knew,
knew that. Yeah.
but I didn't know here. It wasn't like I hear other folks who like they took all the right steps, and they, you know, had a curriculum agenda set up for themselves career wise. They were going to do this move and write that letter and go to this university. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I felt like I was sort of ambling a little bit, but I was definitely ambling towards a vibe.
Okay.
I
Ambling.
never, yeah, like it wasn't a calculated next step. It wasn't a logical,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, premeditated, if you will, step. But I was definitely following the flow, and wherever it felt like I had a resonance, that's where I went, and it was always the same path.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
like being drawn to those pages in the encyclopedia, being drawn to a certain college or a certain class or a certain something, even when I hadn't prepared for it or planned ahead for it.
Mm. Is there any, um, can you put into words a description of that feeling for for those of us who might be living a lot, maybe too much up here?
um, yeah, yeah. So when I was first in college and university, at the very beginning, I was a little overwhelmed because I was the first that had gone to college in my family, and I didn't, again, there was no planning. There wasn't, I just knew I had a strong, like, I want a college degree. Well, I like deeply wanted that. I had no way to quantify that. Didn't know how I was going to make that happen. Didn't even know why the impulse was that strong, but I was going to do it. And so I remember being in college then and not really knowing, like, what do I do while I'm here? Like, how do I pick? What do I do? And I talked to a lot of people, you know, sponge for information. I would talk to a lot of people. I remember learning that there was an advisor that I could speak to at school, and I went to speak to the advisor. And I really had no clue how to choose a career, but everything that was offered in university that was already, like, you know, the nursing program or the physical therapy program or the English program, everything that was offered, I would look at it and I would read the courses, and I would get excited about some of the courses, and then I'd feel a very strong, like, oh,
Mm.
I was like, what the heck is that?
Mm.
And so then I'd go and I'd read the next one, and it was the same thing. I'd get a resonance where I'd lean in, and then I'd get a very clear, ugh. And I was driving myself a little bit nuts, and also my advisor, and they ultimately suggested I go see a vocational counselor because they thought I was being too picky, or that I was doubting myself, or, you know, all the things that they tell you when they're trying to make you conform.
Yeah.
And I was just defiant enough and just rebellious enough that I would not have been easily conformed to most things. Like, I'm really grateful for the time in life that I was born. Um, and so when I went to the vocational counselor, I remember her saying that I that there wasn't anything for me. And I remember thinking, well, that's not true. Like, it can't be true. I wouldn't be here if there wasn't anything for me. I don't know if I even had the words to say that, but I remember thinking that's not true. Like, I was rebellious enough to even not believe that. You're
Yeah.
gonna tell me there's nothing for me? Of course there's something for me. How could there not be something for me? I don't know what it is, and I'd like your support, but how the answer no is not the answer. And then I was waiting tables at the time to, you know, pay my way through college. And I was just sort of, I wasn't filling time. I wasn't, you know, taking pottery and basket weaving, but I was taking anything that I could that interested me. I decided, okay, well, if I'm not in a particular degree path, then it's open lotto for me. I can take whatever I want.
Yeah.
And
Open
my
bar.
advisor,
Yeah.
what's that?
Open bar.
Open bar, exactly. And my advisor was, I think, entertained by me. Like he's a super cute guy, like super collegiate, little bow tie, like super friendly and unassuming. And here's me, like, I'm gonna make sure I'm not no for an answer. And so I said, what do I do? And he said, interestingly enough, we have this new degree where you can create your own. As long as you're working with me and we outline your courses enough and you take all of the right categories of courses, you can take whatever you want. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I create like that just happened. Like I must have created, like not I must have, because I don't think I had that much confidence then,
Yeah.
something like, oh, this is why I didn't take no for an answer, because this is what I was waiting for and nobody told me. It was like one of those.
Yeah.
So I ended up literally taking only courses. I would read through all the course descriptions, and the ones that I would lean into and be a yes for, I would go to him and say, I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. And he would say, well, but those are master's levels. Like you're a junior. And I'd say, oh, I don't care. But you should be in the master's track. I said, but I thought you told me I could take anything I wanted. So he ended up supporting me. I created my own degree, and it was master's level body work, biomechanics, pathophysiology, embryology, all the courses that I would never have been, they wouldn't have been accessible to me,
Yeah.
because they crossed a lot of career paths, or a lot of degree paths, I should say. So that was the first time that I know that like leaning in and feeling that resonance took me to where I wanted to be. And I'm really grateful for that degree, because it was the launching pad for a lot of other things as well, for sure.
So since it was like a fully uniquely created path, like what was the title of the degree in the end? Not
Yeah,
that but yeah, yeah.
it was still a Bachelor of Arts, because I still had to fill that many categories that, the Bachelor of Arts has a structure to it. So I still had to fill that many courses in those structures. But they weren't predestined for me. They were chosen by me.
Wow. What a
Super cool, right?
powerful, wow, yes. Yeah, speaking of power of co-creation.
For real. And I look back and I know exactly what that was. At the time, I just was following my instincts and my attitude a little bit. But looking back, I'm positive that that was divine, was divine intervention on my behalf,
Yeah.
because I wasn't going to take no. And I wasn't going to be told.
Mm. So what do you think is underneath, like, the magic ingredients there? Was it um
Courage.
oh, courage? Okay. Because did you have a vision already, or
No idea what I was doing, didn't know what I was going to be when I grew up. Vocational counselor told me,
yeah,
you're too vague. There's nothing for you. I had no idea. It was that inside, I want this. And
yeah.
I didn't know what the this was. So I would just take it step by step. It was course by course.
It's funny you say courage, and like that, that thing that you loved and you were drawn to. If I remember well, I think Brené Brown talks about courage and says that it comes from actually a French word, like the word cœur, which is the word heart.
I felt it there, Julie.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
I love that. I love that it's a French word.
yeah. So it's like a very strong trust in following the heart.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would say trust. At least I
Yeah,
didn't recognize that word
yeah,
then.
yeah.
It was, and I didn't use the word resonance then. It was a long time ago, but I know that it was that feeling of like that leaning in that I told you about. Like it was kind of like a pull that I couldn't quite describe. And then there was an equal, like magnets that don't match, kind of
Yeah,
like, oh no.
yeah.
And I'd have a lot of that.
Mhm. Feeling, and is it a feeling that you would literally, tangibly feel in the body?
Yes, but now that you're describing it, I felt it here. I was drawn in from my heart, or my heart was like, hmm And I would say to, now as a, more graceful adult, I would call that resonance.
What do you mean more graceful?
Well, not as a teenager, I was like
Where is
hard.
it coming from?
I was different, I think. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe friends of mine would say, no, you're the same. But
Yeah.
I felt, it felt, everything felt urgent. When you're teenagers, when you're, your brain's not even formed until you're 25. So this is like before my brain was formed. And and everything felt dramatic. It was big.
Mm.
Where now, like it's lifing. Like I got it. So there's a little
Yeah.
more grace involved in the,
Yeah.
ebbs
Yeah.
and flows of life, if you will. So
Yeah.
so the word I would use to describe that feeling now is resonance. I
Okay.
either felt, I either feel a resonance, a frequency where I'm like, yes, more of that, or I feel a frequency where I'm like, it feels a little rubby. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say, I'm a no.
Yeah. Do you know what I see it is as physics wise, constructive I just say constructive interference or destructive
Yes,
interference when the waves like either kind of join together and amp up each other or cancel each other.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. So how has that also, um come up in later on, like in the next part of your life, and how you've been kept following this pull or push?
Well, I remember, well, two examples stories come to mind. And one was to pull me back in when I actually, this hasn't been an easy road, just because it was clear at times doesn't mean I didn't get in my own way or make it harder. And one of the things that did happen with that particular degree in college was, my sweet advisor, my cute little bow tie guy, he had miscalculated the number of credit hours I needed. And so I was getting ready to graduate. And he said, oh, so instead of you needed 13 credit hours this semester, you need 18,
Oh.
which is, a gigantic difference. Like hours wise is a gigantic difference. And I was like, no, or I think it was 21 or something. It was a it was like a number that he
Huge.
even said, we're not going to do this. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. And he said, no, 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 you're not going to do it. You could just add an extra semester and then we'll put you in the graduating class for such and such. And it was going to like all pile forward. And I said, no, because the class that I want to take is this particular class. It's only offered once a year.
Yeah.
And he said, well, take a different class, Gina. You can design anything you want. And I said, that's the point. I'm designing what I want. I'm not just going to fill it. I mean, yeah, I guess that's what, so that degree, by the way, doesn't even exist anymore because I think people were maybe just filling it with just hours just to fill, but I was like deliberate. So there I was at the end of my, predestined plan where I thought, oh my gosh, everything exactly as I wanted it. And then some came to be. And then I was physically feeling like, and mentally like I can't do it. Like I was up till 3 in the morning for that last semester and I thought I can't do it. And I remember calling my dad and telling him, it's ridiculous, I'm out, forget it, it's too hard, victim story that my advisor screwed it up, college doesn't want, I don't want a degree unless I want to. And my dad got really like very, he never got like angry, but he was very adamant, you're
Yeah.
going to finish. And I was like, what do you mean? Like it's not even what we talked about growing up. Like, why are you so adamant about this? And the next night in my dream, my paternal grandmother, his mother, came to me just like they talk about in the movies, woke me up. She was in all white. There was a halo around her. There was white light. And I was staring at her and I was like, Grandma. She was already in heaven at the time. So I was like, Grandma, oh my gosh. And I remember her saying, word for word, I want you to follow your heart. And that's what's right. Or it was something about the heart was in there for sure. And as she was speaking to me, it was like 5D sound. Like I could hear it in my ears, I could feel it in my being, I could see it in my eyes. It's like I could see the sound. It was this crazy experience. And I repeated it back to her, and she was as calm as could be. And I remember even I could only see her from the knees up because she was standing like through my bed, like through the end of my bed. And I said, "Oh my gosh, grandma." And I could feel it in that space, in the resonance space. And I said, "I'm going to write this down because I know it's you. There's no mistake that this is you." And I turned to my nightstand to get my notepad that I usually kept there. And as I turned back, she was gone. And I was super sad. I had this feeling of like a gaping hole, like almost grief after. And then I wrote down what she said and I went to sleep. And then when I woke up in the morning and I read it, I had a little tiny feeling, not as not as 12D as it was when she was there, but I had that little tiny feeling, and it was that same feeling I had when I would say yes to a course. And I was like, "Oh." And so her message, I'm not sure if I said this completely, but she wanted me to finish college.
Yeah.
And I was telling my dad, "I don't need to finish. It doesn't matter if I graduate." And he was like, "You're gonna finish." And I was like, "You're not doing all the coursework. I have so much coursework." And so she said, "I want you to follow your heart."
Mm.
And I knew that what she meant was finish
Mhm.
because I felt it, not because she said it. It wasn't logical. It was that feeling again. So I did finish. And I remember right after I graduated being super grateful and thinking, if it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for me being open to having her come to me in that dream, I don't know what I would have done. And now I look back all these years later, like, thank God I have this degree. And right after school, I got hired over the phone by a doctor who had coached me. Like I didn't know him, but he knew me. And he was an orthopedic physician, and he wanted me to be the head therapist in his network of offices. And I was like, wow, like talk about hitting the gold. Like that's great. Like, yeah, of course. You don't need a resume. He's like, no, I know about you. I'm like, wow, whoa, what amazing. And I had also gotten my massage therapy degree at the same time as I was going through university, and that felt super easy compared to the university track.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, okay, well, it must be. And I think he even said, "You're a massage therapist who's degreed.
Yeah.
So I know that you're onto something." I was like, wow, okay, great. Yeah. So I was working in his network of offices, still brand new, wet behind the ears, doing as good a work as I could, working fast, like lots of orthopedic clinical type work. Super grateful for that experience.
So what that about, like, like actually body work on his patients, like in the recovery process, or yeah?
Yes, yeah, they were a lot of workers' compensation. They'd been injured on the job, insurance claims, motor vehicle accidents. And he was heavily involved in insurance. So he was billing a lot per hour, not paying a lot per hour, but anyway. And so I was new as my first job as a career person. And so I was really honored and taking it very seriously and learning as I went. I had a very limited, small window of time to see each patient, and I wanted to create results for them for sure. And I now know that that was the seedling for the method that I developed for sure, or at least the knowing that that's the type of method I wanted to develop. But interestingly enough, a year in, I was very clear that something was not quite right there. Something was shady.
Huh?
And I couldn't put my finger on it. And again, I was young. I asked the office manager, I asked the other practitioners that were there. Turns out I was the only practitioner that was there that had a medical license. The, the others were meant to, but they didn't. And so it just started I started feeling like, wow, I'm like seeing behind, underneath the magic blanket, there's all kinds of things that are not the way they seem. And it became really obvious to me that I was continuing to put myself in an environment that was potentially dangerous for my career. Because if he ever,
And
you
down,
know,
or an
I was
issue.
the only one that,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, so like, if there was an issue because he was not following the rules, then you would have been caught in
right. And
yeah.
I even remember saying to myself, I'm the only one here with a medical license. I'm the only one here with something to lose.
Yeah. Oh,
Everybody else loses their job, but I lose my career. Like, I don't know what the implications are of this. And I had moved into a new apartment. I had bought a new car. I was fresh out of college, paying off my student loans. I I thought I needed the money. And I didn't know where else I was going to go because I hadn't really had to interview for anything. I got poached. So I felt really like unprepared to leave. And I was very stressed,
Yeah.
very like more stressed than finishing that last semester in university, like
Wow.
really stressed.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot at stake. There was a lot to lose. And I remember uh, a friend of mine saying, well, why don't you meditate? And I
Mhm.
was like, do what? And, long story shorter, I made it up. And I
Mm.
remember laying in a comfortable position and just picturing myself in the office, which I was very familiar with. I worked a lot of hours. I pictured myself in my lab coat in the waiting area. I pictured myself in the treatment room. I pictured myself standing at the front desk. And every time in all those snippets that I was picturing, my chest felt tight and I wasn't breathing and I was seeing the color red.
Yeah.
And so then I shook that off, like cleared the slate, if you will. And this friend had been saying, well, why don't you go out on your own? I was like, I don't know how to do that. Leave the doctor's office and go out on your own.
Mhm.
And so I was in this meditation, I was closing my eyes and picturing what would it feel like and look like if I was working on my own, like maybe in the second room of my apartment, because I'd gotten this great apartment. And I closed my eyes and I pictured what it was like to greet someone at the door and to welcome them in and what it would feel like being in the room with them. And it was gold and pink swirl.
Wow.
And I felt calm. And I remember not waking up, but opening my eyes from that meditation and thinking, now, logic, how could I possibly feel calm if I don't even know how to do that?
Yeah.
And then, I realized, oh, it's because something bigger than me is telling me, you got this.
Yeah.
You got this, and we got you. But you have to be, Gina, courageous enough to take the leap. Or you could stay in the doctor's office. You
Yeah.
could follow that path. Fast forward many, 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 many years later, when I was getting a license in another state
Mhm.
and I was needing to recall all of my work history, I called that doctor to sign a document.
Yeah.
And the very first thing he said in a very nervous voice was, well, so I don't know if this matters to your application process, but I no longer have a medical degree. And I was like, that's fine. I just need a history recap. So interesting. If I had stayed in that path, my instincts were telling me something was wrong there, even though nobody else in the office was confirming that. They thought I was, I don't know, nosy.
Oh, yeah. Mhm. So he lost his license. So God.
So my higher knowing
Yeah, your
told me,
intuition. Yeah, knew.
"Mhm,
Yeah. Okay. Uh, so following, so it sounds like for you had that knowing and you were following it quite naturally up to a certain point where somehow you had to be reminded and finding a deliberate conscious way to reconnect with that sense of intuition through meditation.
I wouldn't say I needed reminding because I did. Oh, I'm not actually clear what you just
Yeah.
were leading to, Julie. Say it again for me.
Yeah, what I heard is that for the first part, you were very like naturally following this sense of intuition, and in that moment of stress, when you started to stress in that particular situation, that's when you had to use you got to use a tool to access the knowing,
Yes.
meditation.
Yes, and it just clicked in this very second, hearing you formulate that is stress is a mental thing.
Huh?
So when my brain got in the way, that resonance was not as clear.
Mm.
I had to choose the resonance. I had to choose the heart coherence
Right.
because the brain was now in battle. Like the frequency of the brain and the frequency of the heart were like, you know. And interestingly enough, prior to that, when I was still in college, I even said it just now in our talk today, our brain isn't formed until we're 25 years of age. And I was graduated at 23. So when my brain wasn't fully formed, it was all clear. But then when my brain got online, now I got to choose.
That's so
Conscious.
interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a
Just click.
yeah. Okay, so it goes to show like how much we get in our own way with the mind.
Totally.
Yeah. So
Totally.
we are at the stage that you went on your own, so uh, working with clients. But
Mhm.
like how did the transition then happen to you helping other practitioners or switching into that
So
path?
good. So good. It's another one of those pivotal moments.
Yeah.
So tiny bit of backstory. When 9/11 happened, I elected to go back to school for an interior design degree. Sort of a longer story, but I love beautiful spaces. I love architecture, and I needed solace just like everybody else. And so I chose to do that through education. And I went back and I got this design degree, not thinking I'd ever do anything with it or but I wanted to keep my mind, we didn't know how long that period of time was going to last in the world. Since then, obviously, we've had a couple of those instances. And so, you just like focus on what lights you up and what you love. Oh, something else just clicked while I was talking to you. This is fascinating. Okay, so I'll come back to that. So I went to school for an interior design degree and I loved it. And it was definitely it's like being around art for me. It was beautiful. And in that process, I bought my first home and I designed it. And it was spectacular, I might say. And I the home ended up on TV, and so a lot of people I've got a lot of clients for that. So, and it's just such an aside.
Oh my God.
It's such an aside, and it was a small period of time.
Yeah.
But I was on HGTV. My condo was on HGTV. So I got lot of local people saying, "Oh my gosh, Gina, I didn't know you do this. I thought you do body work. Will you help us with our kitchen remodel or our, addition on our house or whatever?" So I was doing a lot of that. And at the same time, on my career path, I was getting a little antsy, a little bored.
Yeah.
Even though I was doing what I was doing well. And so I like kind of like conquered what's next kind of feeling. So I decided with my brain that I was going to not do body work anymore and I was going to switch career paths and I was going to go do interior design because it was so easy for me. Everybody's just coming to me, right? And my ego was loving that. And it'd be easier because the pay structure, whatever, like you pay up front, like whatever. I made up all these excuses why it was easier. And I remember it was late at night. It was dark outside, dark inside. And I was sitting at my desk with a light on the desk and it was quiet. And I was doing some work for design. And I was thinking in my head, do I want to be leaving body work because it's so easy for me? And not everything about design is easy. I mean, some of it's kind of hard. And, people get emotional about their money when they're buying, spending it on their house. And I was like, no. This is right. I mean, most people have an average of 6 career paths in their adult life. I've only had one. I'm like behind. I should, I should,
Yeah.
I should. My ego. I should switch lanes.
Yeah.
And in that quiet, with my mental just chattering going on, I heard a louder baritone voice
Uh-huh.
that I heard one other time when I was a teenager, just about to get into some grave trouble. Doesn't matter what that was, but I heard that voice then. And here I was as an adult in the quiet of my adult home, and I heard that same baritone voice say, "You may design, it's beautiful, but not at the expense of what we gifted you."
Ooh.
And I was like,
Whoa.
that's what I said. And so I knew that it wasn't like, no, you cannot do design. It was like, go do you, and you've been chosen. We gave you this gift. And then it kind of it got clear that that's what I had been saying, that body work was so easy for me that I was kind of bored because it was just so easy.
Yeah.
But I was creating tremendous results for the patients I was seeing. So how greedy to want to take that away from them because I was bored.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like that voice was saying, you can go be entertained because design is entertaining you, but we've chosen you, we've given you this gift. So I gave me pause for sure. And I thought, okay, well, what else could I do that would be entertaining to me? Oh, I would move to New York. Okay, well, that's better than switching career paths. Okay, got it. So I decided I'm going to move to New York, and lots of other spiritual integration on that as well. The timing of things, like if we had another 2 hours, I would tell you all of those, Julie, because it was definitely a path 100% guided to get me there for sure. Like tingle tests, you know, type of confirmation. And ultimately, when I got to New York, I that was the state I was getting a license in, and you're not permitted to work in that state until you're licensed. So I decided I was going to spend my time getting more educated in the meantime. And it's like, that's what I do, you know? And so I was taking some courses at the very strong massage therapy school in the country. And I was also engaged with a business coach.
Okay.
Year-long mastermind or 6-month mastermind, whatever. It was deep dive because I had all this time on my hands.
Oh, well,
And
how
that
long does it take to get a license?
a long time. I got to New York in September, and I got licensed. I took the state boards in end of January. So it was like a good 5 months to just kind of hang out. I wasn't hanging out. I was hustling, but I wasn't like legally allowed to work, and I would never do anything illegal. And so in our industry, for sure, I speed. So I do illegal thing. I speed all the time when I'm driving. That's illegal,
Okay.
but I do that. But I don't like do anything else that's like felony related. So anyway,
Anyone
so
listening, like
just in case,
no,
just
just
be recorded. Just want to make sure. Yeah, clear.
putting
I'm
the
not
map
perfect.
out.
The laws I break are like acceptable, I guess, socially. I don't know. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. So I was working with this business coach, describing to her the work that I do as a body worker and what I was there doing in New York, etc. And she said, "Oh, so you have a method." And I mean, I roll like, what? New Yorkers, like they make everything such a big deal, you know? And I just resisted. I was back into that, like, no, like that resistance for, no, no, no. And she said, Gina, be open to the coaching. I know you and I have heard that before. I'm like, I'm open to the coaching, but it doesn't make sense. So I'm not open to it. I was judging it. And so to get her to like just quell the conversation, I agreed. I had nothing but time on my hands. I'm going to go meet with some lawyers. I met with a general practice, trademark, and patent attorney. And we all sat around this table. And within the first couple of minutes, they're like, yeah, you have something. A patent would be harder and longer and probably more expensive, but we could trademark it now in the process. And I was like, what? What? And so I had to, humbly go back to my coach and be like, I was wrong. You were right. And now what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
And so that trademark, first of all, recognizing that I did have a method, took away the boredom that I had, and it took me back to purpose. And then the business coach said, well, you have something that's real, you share it.
Yeah.
And I thought she meant what I had already come to understand about me being bored as a body worker doesn't mean take away those results from my clients. It means find a way to be re-inspired again. And what she meant was, and re-inspire other practitioners, because you're not the only one. The average career span in your industry is 6 years, which I already knew. And I was like, oh yeah, I could help us all. Everybody wins.
How many years were you in your career at that stage? Were you already way past the 6 years, I imagine?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I was I started training practitioners in 2014. Okay. And I got licensed in 1993.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just a little bit, like needing a new zhuzhing.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how to spell that. It's, the sprucing. And so this was it. And I thought, wow, this is big and purposeful. Like
But
I get to
also,
continue.
yeah, sorry
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt, Gina, but that it was to re-inspire you, but like it was also to impact more people.
Yes. Yep. The ripple effect was huge.
Yeah.
So not only did I get re-inspired, but I was back to helping and serving the clients that I had and other practitioners and their clients
Yeah.
and
So,
then their clients' lives.
my God,
Yeah,
talking of a ripple, yeah, the ripple effect. Yeah.
huge. And it was because of that voice that said, we gave this to you. It's a gift. Go
Yeah.
share the gift. Mhm. So that was it. That's how I got to train other practitioners.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, so how and so like along the story of your journey, like there is a clear sense of, well, creation and listening and responsibility and because I'm the way I met you through leadership, so through leadership training, which to me was very much unexpectedly, that was not at all what I was expecting, but it was a putting into practice spiritual theory
Mm,
in, and through a program that's very down to earth, that doesn't use spiritual jargon at all, is very
mm,
anchored into practice. And I remember when we were my first round in this program as a student, you were one of the coaches.
mm.
And through some like ups and downs and difficulties and challenges, because that's an intense program to say the least.
Yes,
I
very
remember,
intense.
yeah, meeting you like for the first time, and out of all of the other coaches that I may have interacted with and the trainers, you were the first person from whom I heard words such as, I can't remember for sure that it was this one, but such as resonance, or, speaking
Mm,
of frequency, and that suddenly we're putting like, these words. I was like, oh, we're speaking the same. We're also seeing this whole practical program as seeing the matrix underneath it. And so I wonder if we could maybe talk about this a little bit, as well as in um, like creation. How do we create? And you've experienced it in your career, and what led you to start to doing that leadership program yourself? And
mm.
yeah, and when did you see straight away as well that that creation piece that you already had used in the past? And yeah, can
Wow. I haven't heard that from you before, Julie, that was a word
yeah,
choice. No, I mean, I knew that I connected with you right away. And the reason I know that is because I remember where I was sitting the first time I took a call from you.
yeah,
It was powerful for me. Yeah. But I didn't know that was something that you heard too. So isn't that interesting? We both had that feeling of frequency and connection, right? So I love it. I still have that with you, by the way.
yeah,
Um, but I did not have that same lens the first time through that program as a student. I didn't see it. I definitely see it. It's there for sure. Everything that you're saying about that program and the experience that we had and the end results,
yeah.
I definitely see what you see for sure. But at the time, that wasn't, at the time of me going through it as a student, that wasn't the focal point.
Mhm.
The reason, and you asked me why I got into that program. I got into that program initially because of relationships, interpersonal relationships. I knew that there was a piece that I got to expand on and learn about. I knew there was a piece about me that I wasn't seeing clearly. And I was hot seated by one of our trainers. And in like 4 minutes, she rattled me just enough for me to say, whatever she has, I want that. Like, I'm going, what is she selling? I'm buying.
Yeah.
And I guess in a way that's a frequency.
Yeah.
Like I felt the resonance. I was leaning in towards her, even though I met her over the computer screen.
Yeah.
So I was still following that, and I knew that I was a yes to whatever it was that she was going to teach me.
Okay.
That's how I got into the program. And my why was interpersonal relationships, which I absolutely got clarity and training around for sure. Um, and now I see the program has the oneness and the limitlessness
Yeah.
and the all possibilities and power that spirituality also has. Not also, because they're not separate, but I see the spirituality in the program now. It's not the focus that I had at my first rodeo.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what did leadership contribute to your path in general, and how do we, I'm not sure I have a clear question, but I would love for us to investigate into leadership and spirituality of what does one, how the two are interlinked.
Oh, they're not separate. They're 100% linked.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no overlap. They're one and the same.
Yeah. So how do we define leadership?
Um, Interesting. I've not had to find this before in words. It's a feeling for sure. Leadership for me is that that spiritual part of me,
Yeah.
part that's not my brain, that's not my body, the spirit that's in me, the real me, the timeless me, the part of me that's going to go on after I leave this vessel. Leadership is choosing that part of me to be at the forefront,
Wow.
that my spirit makes the decisions, not my brain. I love the body. It's my favorite muse. And the brain is a magical organ, and it's designed for recall only. If I let my brain make a decision, I'm going to make a decision based on something historic, something yesterday, an old thought, an old experience, an old. So when I let my being lead, when I allow my being to make the decisions, when I allow that yearning and that resonance pull me towards what I want, my vision in the world, then that's leadership. It's not my brain.
Suddenly when you were talking, I got that sense of, yes, we got the body, we got the mind, we got the spirit. And so that leadership is like, where do we want? Because we could place it, if we want to, we could place it, we can let the mind lead. And so then it's choosing to have it be with our spiritual aspect, maybe rather than our mental aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so the model that I use is Bob Hoffman's. It's not mine. Bob Hoffman came up with the quadrinity model,
Yeah.
which is a lot of folks understand mind body, and they're not separate because your mind is in your body. So mind, body, energy or emotion, and spirit. And so that's his model. And that makes sense to me because our emotions are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are not our emotions. We learn that in leadership as well. Those are two aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
And our body often gets overlooked or gives us clues on either of them that we overlook. Right? Like that feeling that I had when I was meditating where I felt tight. My body was responding to the knowing that my spirit was conveying through me, through my body. But if I wasn't paying attention to my body and I wasn't seeing the colors and feeling the tightness in my chest, I might have missed it. I would have let my brain try to solve it. My brain can't solve anything new because it's only got old information in it. So those four aspects are real. And I did do that process as well. That's another incredible leadership process. And it put to words what I was already experiencing. And so when I can keep them clear, not separate because we are whole,
Yeah.
but when I can keep the four aspects of me clear
Yeah.
and understand who's doing the communicating, then I know where my decisions get to be made from. It's kind of like what you and I just said a couple minutes ago. When my brain was doing the thinking, I was getting stressed.
Yeah.
But when my being was doing the thinking, I was just drawn.
Yeah.
That's the leader. Like let your spirit lead you.
Mm. And as a as a body specialist, as a body worker, what do you see in people, I'm guessing, when we don't listen? I'm guessing you're seeing some physical impact on the body when we are not having the leadership in the right place, so to speak.
Mhm. Well, it's not right or wrong. It's just
Yeah.
a choice.
Yeah.
But yes, you're nailing it, Julie. So I largely do physical body work. Of course, I'm trained in mindset work and I'm trained as an energy worker as well because because I was seeing that we were many aspects, and they overlap at times. So just like my body was giving me a sense when I was meditating, our bodies carry messages too. So it's not always like this. Like I don't want folks to get confused, but for example, I train practitioners to think about their work with clients as a Venn diagram where there's an overlap between, and I only use three aspects:
Yeah.
mind, body, and energy and emotion. Energy and emotion is the same in the Venn diagram I teach from. And what that looks like is if you have a client who comes to you with physical injury from a car accident, a motor vehicle accident, and it's a young mom with a newly arrived baby in the back seat, strapped in, but in the back seat, and they are aware that this accident at the intersection is about to happen, and they're panicked because they have their baby in the back. Whatever that impact is, everybody survives in this scenario, everything's good. But the physical impact from that motor vehicle accident is real. It's a physical functional discrepancy that we as body workers get to address. And there is absolutely an energy that comes with her. How could there not be?
Mm.
So those two things are both present in that physical manifestation. And so so practitioners don't have to be energy workers and mindset workers to do effective body work, but I invite them all to consider that to wholly support the client that you're responsible for, that you refer them to somebody else who can take care of that whole.
Yeah.
Because when I get rid of physical discrepancies, some clients who've been treated in other I realize I didn't finish that sentence. When I get rid of physical discrepancies, there can still be other things that generate pain.
Okay.
And it might not be physical pain, although the physical body is the one raising its hand for help because it's the one that's being heard in that moment. I've had other experiences where patients have come to me after being seen by other practitioners, and there isn't anything. X-rays show it's not there. My palpation doesn't show it's not there. But then I know there's a Venn diagram involved. And so instead of making the patient think they're crazy and saying, I can't help you, which is kind of pervasive and it's frustrating to me, I always bring in the Venn diagram. Well, what else happened? What else do I know about energy and how energy moves through the body? Eastern anatomy is real. There's energy, all kinds of energy patterns that run in all sorts of different anatomical alignments, if you will, that we as body workers, especially those who study energy work, know. So if this client who seems to have nothing physical going on has a very specific pain in a specific area of the body, what energy travels through that side of the body? What energy travels through that limb? What energy, and then what happened to you right before the onset of this physical manifestation? So I'm not telling them it doesn't exist. I'm trying to find the root of it. And the root isn't physical, but it doesn't mean there isn't anything there. It means it's not physical. It means the physical body in their Venn diagram, in their wholeness, is what's communicating. And I believe that because I've had so much comfort in feeling the resonance of something that isn't a physical body talking to me with its mouth, that it's really natural for me to go there.
Yeah. Following the energy, the unseen.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And Gina, so because we are like, I had lost track of time for a while because
flies
So
with you all the time, Julie.
yeah, I know. And so I want to ask you, is there a question that I have not asked you that you would want to answer to finish up?
Um, I don't think so. I've actually learned something new in my share with you. So I've been really loving it. So I think your questions have been perfect. I would love to talk all the time
Yeah.
to folks who are interested if it serves, so there's nothing that I want to hold back from, but I don't feel that there's anything I haven't shared
Okay.
either.
Okay. So I know that you offer for anyone who feels that there is something for them in that conversation that they need to go further with, that you're happy to have a chat with them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'll link that and make sure that people know that they can have a 30-minute conversation with you about anything that came up in that
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, the link that I gave you, or that I have for you, is already pre-formatted. It says let's talk anatomy.
Yeah.
It can be anything though. If your folks want to use that link, just gets them on my calendar. We can talk physical anatomy, spiritual anatomy, whatever kind of anatomy works, the Venn diagram, or if they're, looking for like what is the right modality for them based on something that they haven't resolved yet within themselves, I'm happy to brainstorm with them about that. Yeah, anything that's on anyone's mind, feel free. Time is my gift. So come and
Yeah.
ask questions if I can answer. I would be happy to.
Yeah. Thank you, Gina, because I'm thinking there could be also people listening to us who have an incline to maybe start like change career and maybe get into like supporting people with a massage or any other modality, and they might be wondering, is it really for me? So that could also
Oh,
be, that you can support with. So thanks in
absolutely.
advance for anyone who's gonna reach out. And so I
A
want to
pleasure.
thank you again, thank you for today, thank you for all the previous coaching, and that you generously offered, gifted me, since I've known you. So thank you so much, Gina. And yeah, so thank you everyone for staying with us up until the end, and I shall see you next week for another career and spirituality conversation. Bye. Love you all.